So to give you the background, like I said, it started a couple years ago. Shortly after joining the gym, um, I was doing the treadmill, and after a couple weeks, I started getting some pain in the top of my feet, like sharp pain that would kind of spread across the tops, and I just kind of brushed it off as the typical pain that you would get after a workout. But then, like I said, after it didn't go away, I thought that I probably needed to go get it looked at. Wasn't quite sure what it was. I thought maybe it was just some sore muscles or some tendons or something, from doing the activity. So I went to an orthopedic doctor who's part of a large firm here locally where I live. They have a hip and knee and a foot and ankle divisions, and he took some X-rays, did the physical exam, pressing on it, seeing if anything hurt, and it didn't. But it just hurt to walk. But pressing on it didn't hurt. So he thought that was a little unusual. But took X-rays, didn't see anything wrong. So we kind of again brushed it off as maybe it's just something with the muscles or the tendons or the ligaments or something. So we went on, or he put me on a one of those steroid step down treatment pack thingies. I think it's you take 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 6 the first day, 5 the next day, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you all know what it is. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Well, that didn't help, and I'd gone back a couple more times throughout the following, I don't know, I guess a couple months, and finally ended up deciding we would get MRIs done on my feet because we couldn't really find out what was going on and needed to see what was happening. Well, the results came back, and it turned out I had stress fractures in the second metatarsal on each foot, on both feet. In fact, I think I had two fractures on the right foot and one on the left. The second fracture on the right foot was actually in, I believe it's called the cuneiform bone, which, if you're looking at your hand, your finger would be considered the metatarsal, and then the knuckle bone would be considered the cuneiform bone, except obviously it's in your foot. So the treatment was, just take it easy on it, or on them. Didn't get any boots to put on or anything like that, like I've seen other folks have to do. You break a foot, break a bone in your foot, and they put you in a boot for a while to keep the pressure off of it. Well, none of that happened. So time went on, and I started developing a sharp or a pain, or it started as a dull pain in my left hip area, kind of high up on the thigh, I would say close to the like to the groin area of your leg. If you know what I mean, it's kind of the inner part, front to inner portion of your thigh. So over a period of time, and really what I thought was causing it is because I had been limping, all this time, or for several months, from the pain that I was dealing with in my feet from the fractures. So, like I said, I started developing that pain in my left hip, and then finally one time I was walking, like limping like I normally did, and I went to take a step with my left foot, and something just, the pain, just whatever happened in my left, like I said, the left groin area, I mean, it buckled me over, and thankfully I had something to grab onto, or I probably would have hit the floor. The pain was that severe. So I immediately thought, well, that's not natural. So, I kind of thought it was, perhaps something to do with walking funny, walking with a limp, and maybe I was doing something to the ligament or the tendon or the muscle. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know the anatomy of it, but, or at least didn't have a good understanding of it at the time. So I went back to ortho, except this time I saw a hip doctor, and same thing as the foot doctor. Took X-rays, did an exam, didn't see anything wrong. So he said, well, let's put you on crutches for a few weeks, take some weight off of it and see if that helps. So a few weeks go by, it wasn't helping. The pain was still there. It wasn't certainly as bad as the one that doubled me over, but you knew it was there. So I thought, well, maybe it's something muscular. I'm just tightening up because my gait was off, my everything was off, my stride was off from all the limping. So I thought, well, I've got to be probably just tightening up. So I started going in to see a physical therapist, hoping just help me stretch out, get loosened up, get some strength up. I didn't know what was going on. So after seeing her for a few weeks, I think I was going 2 or 3 times a week for about 3 weeks. She said, this really isn't getting any better, and it wasn't. So she said, well, let me get you a referral to get a second opinion on what might be going on with your hips, and the goal was to get an MRI to kind of be able to look in there and see what's going on. So she got me a referral to a private practice to get that second opinion, and he took X-rays, did an exam, and his response, or his immediate diagnosis, was that I needed a hip replacement. So me being mid 40s at the time, not that it's entirely uncommon, because I've certainly heard of folks having to get it done. I've heard of folks having to get it done in their 20s. But it did make sense to me that would be the diagnosis, because just not even a year prior, it was active, no issues, healthy lifestyle, and all of a sudden, because I'm limping, or I've been limping, that you're telling me I need a hip replacement. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I ended up going back to the place that I saw the first time, the establishment, the orthopedic establishment. Except this time I saw a different doctor, and it really not really a reason for that, but they just put you in a queue since I wasn't already quote unquote a patient being treated by a particular doctor. They just put you in the queue. So I got a different doctor, and after explaining everything to him, he agreed that we just needed to get an MRI and see what was going on. So that we did that. Now this was, like I said, this whole thing started 2 years ago. It was around March or April of 2015, and at this point it's January of 2016 when I saw the last orthopedic hip doctor. So around February, first week of February, is when we got the MRI done, and they called me about a week later with the results and said, well, it looks like you have a stress fracture in your left hip, or your left femur, and a stress reaction in the right, which I've learned is essentially the same thing. It's basically a weak spot in the bone that develops is the stage before the actual fracture occurs. So now this was, again, mid-February of 2016, and they said, well, the treatment at that point was, it's on the compression side of the femur, and really if it's not on the neck, like, so if this is, let me get it right here. So if this is your femoral head, this is the femoral neck, and then this would be the femur bone itself, your leg bone. So this is what goes into the socket in your hip, and you have a narrow part that's considered the femoral neck, and then your femur's below that. It was down here on the actual femur, below the neck. A lot of them occur up here in the neck, in the femoral neck. Mine was below that. Not too far, but below it. And they said since it was on the compression side, which would be the inner part, that it wasn't a concern for needing to have any pins put in it or surgery, that the treatment was essentially just to not do any weight-bearing activity for, I think it was 12 to 16 weeks, somewhere in that time frame, and then it would heal. Of course, the problem with that is, I was dealing with it on both sides essentially. So how do you not put any weight, just in your daily function? So I went through the next, 12 to 16 weeks doing the best I could to not put weight on it, and that required me. I had to put more weight on the right side, of course. So meanwhile, I was still going back to him for follow-up appointments, and then I continued to have follow-up appointments after that 12 to 16 week time period was over. And through subsequent x-rays and exams, even other MRIs that were done, you could see that it just wasn't healing the way it should, or with the progression that it should have. So we actually got it's called an ultrasonic, or I think it's an ultrasound bone stimulator. Neat little device, which basically it uses ultrasound, a low frequency ultrasound, that you place over the spot of the injury or the fracture for 20 minutes a day, and it's got a strap that you just strap it around, whether it's your wrist or foot or wherever it happens to be, and it has a timer on it. You hit the button, and it just runs for 20 minutes a day, and it's supposed to speed up the recovery time, I think, by like 60 to 70%. I mean, it's really pretty neat. So anyway, I tried that for, I think, probably 2 or 3 months, and again, and I was doing it on both sides. So at one point, with X-rays, you can eventually see the stress fracture whenever your bone starts to remold, is when you can see, or was when they can see on the X-ray the actual fracture starting to heal. And at one point, you could see the right side, the right femur was healing. Okay, I mean, it wasn't great, but the left side was very slow coming along. I mean, it was very far behind. So anyway, he just said, well, let's stick to that for now, but we need to try to figure out why, a relatively young, hey, I'll take it when I can get it, but a relatively young, healthy person would fracture the strongest bone in the body, from a non-traumatic injury. There was nothing that happened. I wasn't in a car accident. I didn't fall off a building. None of that. So he referred me to see an endocrinologist to run a bunch of tests.